Welcome back to Pace Immigration, paceimmigration.com, talking once again with U.S. and Canadian immigration lawyer Michael O'Rourke. Michael, good to see you.
Hey, Sean, good to see you. How's it going?
It's going well, thanks. We've got, does divorce affect my green card? I see a lot of chatter online. We get the emails coming in, comments on social media, chatter on various sites around the internet, where people get worried that, they get married and they get a green card, and then they're worried that divorce is going to affect it. But let's start at the beginning. So we can set the stage, as it were. Marriage-based green cards, talk about those, and then also talk about conditional green card.
Sure. So when a U.S. citizen marries a foreign spouse and they want the foreign spouse to join them in the United States, they will file an I-130 petition to request that the foreign spouse be given permanent residence. At the end of the I-130 petition stage, the foreign spouse can either get an immigrant visa from a consulate abroad, or they can adjust status if they're in the United States. If the marriage has been less than 2 years from the date of marriage to the date of filing of the I-130 petition, the foreign spouse is going to get a conditional green card that's only valid for 2 years. At the end of that 2-year period, the spouse is going to have to then file an application to lift the conditions on the green card. But right. If they've been married for more than 2 years, then the foreign spouse will get a traditional 10-year green card.
Okay, so what I'm seeing online, and not without reason, is I think the conditional green card is throwing people a little bit because, of course, it makes it seem conditional. And I'm seeing what happens. So here we have, by the way, on the screen, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, we have this nice wedding reception and someone getting a photo there. But unfortunately, sometimes as it happens, yes, on the next screen here, we have what happens if you get divorced. And I'm seeing a lot of people that have conditional green cards or otherwise, they're thinking, and not without reason, I think, wait a minute, I got into the country because of the marriage. What happens if the marriage dissolves? Am I out of luck? Do I lose my permanent resident status?
As Chinua Achebe wrote, things fall apart. Marriages fall apart. Time.
Well, if marriages might fall apart, then what happens to the immigration process?
As long as there is no marriage fraud, so as long as the marriage was bona fide when the spouses entered into it and they filed the I-130 petition, and as long as there is no misrepresentation in the immigration documents, in the immigration applications, then USCIS will evaluate that petition to lift the conditions on the green card and issue a 10-year green card. Only if there is some sort of taint, some sort of fraud or inkling that the marriage was not a real marriage, that it was just entered into for immigration purposes, should the spouses be concerned. But otherwise, these petitions for lifting the conditions are filed all the time and granted all of the time.
So divorce, we can boil it down to basically, it matters, but divorce doesn't really matter in terms of immigration as long as your marriage was straight up.
Exactly.
Now, what happens if, and we've talked about this off camera before, what happens if you have a spouse who is vindictive or something and wants to contact USCIS and say, hey, you know what, she or he only married me because they wanted a green card?
Well, then that is going to be a fight because USCIS does take those tips very seriously. You're going to need to amass the documentation showing that it was real, the love letters, the texts, the anything and everything that you can show, the visits back and forth, meeting mom and dad, going on vacation together. You're going to have to basically reprove the bona fides of the marriage if USCIS looks into this and they do take the ex-spouse's complaint seriously.
Would a lack of evidence also help? There's no texts, no emails that say, hey, I can get you a green card or anything of that nature?
Well, I would hope that they wouldn't talk about such things in writing, but it's hard to infer that, oh, hey, they didn't conspire to actually do this. No, you proving the bona fides is going to be an affirmative thing. It's like,
Okay.
let's look at all of this evidence that we've got. If there's a smoking gun, it's like, okay, I will pay you $10,000 if you marry me and file a green card for me. If something like that exists and the jilted spouse decides to submit that to USCIS, pack your bags.
Right. There, we should bring up one other thing, though. If someone thinks that this only is a one-way street for the spouse that wanted the green card, the sponsoring spouse can get themselves into trouble, no?
Oh, yeah. So if there is marriage fraud, if there is a finding of marriage fraud, it can be referred to a U.S. attorney, and they can file suit seeking criminal penalties with imprisonment up to 5 years and fines up to $250,000 for both the foreign spouse and the U.S. spouse.
Okay, so don't make accusations lightly, people. One last thing I wanted to throw at you here, because I've seen this in relation to divorce. Some questions online and even on our YouTube channel, that someone goes to Border Patrol right at the border, and they have a hassle there about the validity of their green card because the Border Patrol officer is asking about the bona fides of the marriage. And in fact, in one video that we saw, Michael, that we talked about before, they pretty much walk the person down the road to giving up their green card voluntarily. Talk about that.
Yeah, don't ever do it. That's the easy thing. So Border Patrol has a ton of power. Unfortunately, there are some officers who use and abuse that power. If they seize your green card, do not sign anything. There's a form called a Form I-407, which voluntarily relinquishes your permanent residence. Don't ever sign that. Really, the only person who can take away your permanent residence status is an immigration judge. If they demand your card, say, please give me a notice to appear in immigration court so I can talk to a judge. They won't like that because then that shifts the power away from them. But don't ever sign anything. If they do demand your card, if they take that card away from you, it's a card. You're still a permanent resident. And you can then go and reapply for the card. You might have to explain what happened, but the card is the card. It's not your status. Something else, we see some CBP officers saying, well, I'm going to detain you until you do it. Call their bluff. We've seen, I think in that one video that we had talked about a while back, they said to the person, well, I'm not going to let you in, even though you're a permanent resident, unless you give up the green card, and then I'll let you come in as a tourist. Say no, reassert yourself. I am a legal permanent resident of the United States. I am demanding to be let into the country.
Right. That's great advice, because they do hold all the power. And when you're standing there at the border, you can feel pretty powerless, but it is a good answer to say, okay, if we can't sort this out here, maybe we'll have to sort it out in front of an immigration judge.
Exactly.
Okay. And of course, talk to counsel immediately after that.
Yeah, immediately after. They won't let you whip out your phone and give me a call. They don't like us. We're pushy. We know the rules. We don't
right.
get into their power trips, but talk to somebody immediately afterwards.
That's sound advice.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael O'Rourke, you can reach him, MO'Rourke@pacelawfirm.com, if you have trouble at the border or anywhere else when it comes to immigration. He's your guy. Thanks a lot, Michael. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.